More now on changes in Cuba-US relations. Let's turn to Mavis Anderson. She's a senior association for the Latin America Working Group. Mavis, thanks for being on our program.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
So let's begin with Havana's reaction. We heard from Josefina Vidal in Michael Voss's piece. She said, this is a fair decision. Cuba should have never been on the list to begin with. My question to you is, was this more about politics or really terror activities when they imposed this some 30 years ago?
When the list was imposed on Cuba, or when Cuba was put on the list, there may have been some reason for it. They were involved in revolutionary activities in the region, but that's a long time ago. That's a very long time ago. And since '92, it's been very clear from the Cubans themselves that they no longer were supporting revolutionary movements. And it's been known in this country for a couple of decades that Cuba didn't belong on that list, and it was domestic politics that kept them there.
So this is a very big deal for Cubans and a huge victory for them.
This is a very big deal. It's a huge victory for both countries, because Cuba's position on the terrorist list and the impact of the embargo is felt in both nations. So it's a huge victory for both.
So Mavis, where do you see this process moving on from this point on? Are you concerned at all about hardline lawmakers in U.S. Congress getting in the way of this? Are you concerned about Cuban Americans in Miami who may not necessarily be eager about normalizing relations between the two countries?
You know, their voices, the Cuban American voices in South Florida, are much more muted now. Florida has changed. The Cuban American community has changed. There are still some very loud voices, and some of those are in the Congress. And I expect that we'll hear some rumbling from them. But this is a decision by the president and by the State Department. The Congress has been notified. They have now 45 days to respond. And even the Miami Herald, which is no friend of Cuba's, has said, just let it be. Let it be. There are not the votes in the Congress to override a veto by the president, or perhaps even to pass a resolution of disfavor. So let it be. This is going to happen. Let's do away with all the kerfluffle.
Josh Earnest, White House Press Secretary, admits, they've come a long way, but there are still big differences between the United States and Cuba. What are some of those differences still politically? Human rights, probably one of them?
There are still big differences, and there will continue to be, but I think for the first time, our two countries and the leaders of our two countries are acting like adults, and saying, yes, we know what our common interests are, and yes, we know that there are some major issues where we will not agree, and we'll go ahead anyway with talking, with negotiating, with reestablishing diplomatic relations.
Mavis, we just saw this video we're looking at right now with President Obama and Raul Castro from the weekend conversation in Panama. When I saw that video, I was thinking this truly would have been unthinkable just a few years ago. Two world leaders who really haven't had any kind of relationship, any relations between these two countries, finally sitting down, shaking hands, smiling, and saying nice things about each other.
Exactly. President Castro called President Obama an honest man and apologized, saying that none of this was his fault, and the president of this country was very gracious also. It was amazing. It was amazing and almost unthinkable.
And what do you think, finally, as far as embassies are concerned? How soon do you think we will see the establishing of, diplomatic offices in one another's countries?
Well, I choose to be optimistic about it. I hope that that will happen before the 45 days are over that Congress has to respond to the terrorist list designation. It could happen. It could happen. I think Secretary Kerry is ready to go to Havana and open an embassy.
Certainly, this seemed like one of the last remaining obstacles.
There are a few things that the U.S. still wants. They want pretty clearly, they want access to whomever they care to talk to in Cuba, and that would include the so-called dissidents. But I think they're ironing those things out and finding a way to move forward.
All right, Mavis Anderson, thank you so much for being on our program.
My pleasure. Thank you.